Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SWAS. We are into NFL Week 10. Thursday Night Football, we got a good one. Cincinnati on the road in Baltimore, division game here. Coming off a good NFL week. I had a really nice Sunday. Hopefully that continues. My college football winning streak definitely ended violently. I got crushed on Saturday, but bounced back with a nice NFL Sunday. So hopefully we take some of that momentum into this week. Bengals, Ravens in Baltimore. Let's do it.
Welcome to the SWAS. The SWAS. SWAS. Hey, get the SWAS.
All right, like I said, Cincinnati's on the road in Baltimore. Ravens are laying 6 points at home. I do see mostly 6. Pretty much 6 across the board here. Total sitting at 53 or 53.5, depending on your sports book. Let's take a look at the pie charts, and according to the data, action's coming in pretty split on this one. About 55% of the tickets, just over 50% of the money on Baltimore. But as I always say, take this data with a grain of salt. So let's get into this matchup, and I actually got a trend here. Cincinnati on the road in Baltimore, actually 7-3 against the spread in their last 10 trips here. Just 4-6 straight up, but they have covered in their last 10 trips over here in Baltimore. Also, this game being on the road might be a positive for the Bengals. On the season, they're a perfect 4-0 against the spread in their road games, 3-1 straight up. Things have been a disaster in their home games in Cincinnati, but as far as on the road, the Bengals have played much better. Another positive angle for Cincinnati here, Ja'Marr Chase is playing, and Mike Macdonald is not the defensive coordinator for the Ravens. I know that seems random, but check out these splits. So when Ja'Marr Chase plays against the Ravens, Joe Burrow is averaging 444 yards per game, over 73% completions. Look at the left side of this graphic. Elite numbers against the Ravens when Ja'Marr Chase plays and Mike Macdonald is not the DC. Mike Macdonald had no problem clamping Joe Burrow in this Bengals passing attack, but Joe Burrow, when Mike Macdonald has not been there and Ja'Marr Chase is on the field, actually has gone off against the Ravens, and we saw a demonstration of that earlier this year. The Bengals offense is also coming into this one with some momentum. 41 points, 55.9% success rate last week against the Raiders, 251 yards through the air, 66.7% success rate per dropback, an average passer rating of 115. So Bengals offense coming off a good game, and you might be thinking, who cares, it's against the Raiders? Well, actually, defensively, on paper, the Raiders and Ravens are actually pretty close. Obviously, we know they're not, but so far, based on the production we have, the Raiders 10th in yards per play, 23rd in success rate. Ravens are 20th and 11th. And specifically against the pass, the Raiders defense has actually been better than the Ravens defense. Now, obviously, we know that's probably not true. The Ravens defense is pretty loaded, but they've really struggled against the pass so far this year. But honestly, when I looked at this matchup, the first thing that came to mind was that little stretch where Joe Burrow could not get the pass game going. It was weeks 6 through 8. Just 207.7 passing yards per game, 6.9 yards per attempt, average passer rating of 94. Look at the opponents. Cleveland, Giants, Philadelphia. What do they have in common? They're all top 10 pass rushers, or at least we believe them to be. The Ravens are probably not a top 10 pass rush, 16th in pressure rate, 11th in pass rush grade, 12th in adjusted sack rate. Cleveland, Giants, Eagles all probably have better pass rushes than the Ravens do. So maybe the Bengals offensive line is able to keep Joe Burrow protected in this one. The problem is they're still not healthy. Trent Brown's been out since week 3, and we've seen the Bengals pass protection have all kinds of problems since then. We don't know if Orlando Brown Jr. is going to play at left tackle. That's their best 2 linemen right there. Brown and Brown. Actually, they're both named Brown. Orlando Brown Jr. has been practicing this week, so maybe he comes back, but still, this is not exactly a pass protection I trust right now, and there's no T. Higgins, and we'll talk about that in a second. And they're matched up against a Ravens defense completely healthy in the secondary. They've been banged up a little bit this year. Stevens is healthy, Nate Wiggins healthy, Marlon Humphrey healthy, fully good to go in the secondary. They are missing Michael Pierce at nose tackle. Also, there's an injury to the depth of the defensive line. But as a whole, this Ravens defense is in good shape right now. And the question is, have we finally reached a buy low point on the Ravens pass defense? Because as we saw on the numbers before, they've been terrible against the pass so far this year. When you look at the quarterbacks they've seen, I mean, it makes a little bit of sense. They've seen Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels, Baker Mayfield. So they've seen a lot of good quarterbacks. We saw them absolutely blanket the Broncos Broncos offense last week. I'm not trying to say this Ravens pass defense is good, but I think it's safe to say that it's not nearly as bad as the numbers indicate. And they're matched up against a Bengals passing attack. Yes, it's very dangerous, but they're missing T. Higgins, and that might be a bigger factor than we're giving it credit for. In weeks 3 through 7, those were the games that T. Higgins played in. The Bengals were averaging 267.4 passing yards per game, 8.3 yards per attempt, a 112.7 average passer rating. Look at the 4 games they played without T. Higgins. 226.8 passing yards per game. That's not a lot for Cincinnati, an offense that wants to throw the ball. Just 6.4 yards per attempt. So the downfield passing attack just doesn't work the same this year without T. Higgins, or at least it appears not to. And I really don't think we can count on Joe Burrow having any run support in this game. Just 89.4 rushing yards per game in their last 4 and even 4 yards per carry. I know Chase Brown did play well last week, 27 carries, 120 yards, 4.4 yards per carry. That was against the Raiders. This is an offensive line that's been struggling to generate push all season, 19th in adjusted line yards, 31st in run blocking grade, and they're matched up against Baltimore, who's probably the best run defense in the NFL. On the season, Baltimore's allowing just 76.1 rushing yards per game, 3.48 yards per carry, 27.8% success rate per rush is crazy. So this is probably the best run defense in the NFL. Cincinnati's probably not going to be able to run the ball, and with the inconsistent play we're seeing from the injured offensive line without T. Higgins, I really don't like this matchup for Cincinnati offensively here. But what about the matchup on the other side? Let's take a look at the Ravens offense, leading the NFL. First in yards per play, second in success rate. I mean, I think you'd have to say this has been the best offense in the league so far up to this point. They're first in yards per play, first in yards per pass attempt, first in yards per carry, first in success rate per dropback, second in success rate per rush. A lot of ones here on this graphic, and they're matched up against a Cincinnati defense who, as I'm sure you've heard, hasn't been having the best year. They are 8th in yards per play allowed, but success rate terrible, EPA terrible, DVOA terrible. It's been a struggle for the Bengals defensively, but we do have to give them a little bit of credit. Their defense seems to be coming around. It's not really being talked about. In the first 5 games, check this out. Bengals were allowing over 152 rushing yards per game, 4.8 yards per carry, over 45% success rate per rush. That's in weeks 1 through 5. Check this out. In the 4 games since then, they're allowing just 105 rushing yards per game, just 3.8 yards per carry, and success rate per rush is down to 40.9%. So this Bengals defense, which we all love to make fun of, it's been bad. They've actually been playing solid defense against the run in their last 4 games. And yeah, they played the Giants, Cleveland, Philadelphia's in there, and the Raiders. So there's a few bad rushing attacks in there, but no question, this Bengals defense against the run is playing much better as of late. And it's not like this Cincinnati defensive front has just been getting blown off the line of scrimmage. They're 16th in adjusted line yards, 9th in run defense grade, 10th in yards before contact. So this Cincinnati defensive front, not nearly as bad as you think when it comes to stopping the run. Now, when it comes to stopping Lamar Jackson from using his legs, this is where they may run into problems. In their last 4 games against mobile quarterbacks, 192 rushing yards, 36 carries, 5.33 yards per carry. So Cincinnati has had problems with mobile quarterbacks. And in his last 6 games against Cincinnati, Lamar Jackson's averaging 67.7 rushing yards per game, 11.3 rush attempts per game, almost 6 yards per carry. So limiting Lamar Jackson on the ground may be a problem, but in terms of stopping them from handing the ball off to Derrick Henry and just pounding the Bengals defense into the ground, I actually think they can hold their own. And when it comes to the Bengals defense against Lamar Jackson as a thrower, this is where it gets a bit trickier. Obviously, as I'm sure you know, in the Week 5 game, Lamar Jackson had a great game throwing the ball. Bengals allowed 348 yards through the air, 8.3 yards per attempt, 119.9 passer rating in the game. But again, let's give them some credit. In the 4 games since that Ravens game, they're allowing just 229 passing yards per game, 6.4 yards per attempt, an average passer rating of 86.8. So another situation where we may have to take a step back, put our biases aside about the Bengals defense, and admit that they are actually playing a lot better than it may perceive. We all make jokes about how bad the Bengals defense is. It really hasn't been that bad as of late. And Lamar Jackson, he threw for 348 yards or whatever against the Bengals last game. That was a little bit of an anomaly. I mean, in his career before that game, he averages just 183.4 passing yards per game against Cincinnati, 7.5 yards per attempt, an average passer rating of 96.8. I'm not saying Lamar Jackson has trouble with the Bengals defense. I'm just saying 350 yards or whatever it was, That was a little bit of an outlier. He usually doesn't do that, so I think it'd be irresponsible to bet on that happening again. I know the idea of the Bengals defense going into Baltimore and giving the Ravens offense problems, I know that seems crazy, but we saw this same Bengals defense go on the road to Arrowhead. They lost that game 26-25 on a pass interference and a game-winning field goal. It wasn't the Bengals offense that kept them in that game. It was the defense in Arrowhead against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense, held them to just 286 total yards, 4.8 yards per play. The Bengals defense showed out in that game against the Chiefs. Lou Anarumo and the Bengals defense have shown us they're capable of showing up in these big games. We've seen it before. I mean, they went on playoff runs with this defense. Baltimore's been vulnerable in terms of pass protection. I wouldn't be surprised if Hendrickson is able to make some plays in this game. So I actually think we're going to see a great effort from the Bengals defensively, which is why you guys are going to hate this bet. Based on what happened in week 5, you guys are going to hate it. I'm taking the under here. 53.5 is a big number, and I'm expecting to see great games from both these defenses. So give me the under, 53.5. I know it seems crazy based on how that first game went, but I'm playing the under in this one. If you put a gun to my head and force me to pick a side, I'd probably try to grab a 5.5 with Baltimore if you can find one, maybe a 6. I think Baltimore's the much stronger team here. But I'm just going to play the under 53.5. Live show, 4 p.m. Eastern time. If you're able to make it, we'll go through the NFL game, the college football games, the NBA slate, and college basketball. We'll go through all of it. That's at 4 p.m. Eastern time. If you're able to make it, we'd love to see you in the comments. If you want to see all the bets I currently have open for the weekend, head over to KyleKirms.com and click on open bets. You'll see all mine as well as everyone on the staff here. Let's have ourselves a great Thursday night. Please remember to bet responsibly. Talk to you in the Discord.